Chapter 10 Christmas with Carlisle. I had a hard time getting out of the house the next morning. Callie had to remind us again to behave when her date came by, and Caleb was getting anxious for an invitation to share in the ownership of our fort. I didn't ask him. Caleb's too young for real tough stuff like that. When I finally made it, I started running and slipping down the icy sidewalk toward our fort. Amos was already there. He saw me coming and ran out to meet me. "Holy catfish," said Amos. "What's the matter?" I asked him. "You'll never believe it." "Believe what?" "There's a moose or something in our fort." "That's Carlisle," I said, and I told him about my deal with Slim. "You should have told me about it earlier," said Amos. "I came over early and climbed into the fort right on top of that moose of yours." "He's a goat." "Well, anyway, he growled at me. I went right up that oak tree. And he stinks terrible." Soon Dink and Harvey arrived. "Wait till we tell you," said Dink. "Wait till we tell you," said Amos. "Good night," said Dink. "Who put that elk in our snow fort?" "He's a goat," I insisted. I explained again. "Let me tell you my news," said Dink. "We're fighting that gang of kids from South Harleyville. Myron Webster and some of his friends. They agreed to attack us at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We got it all arranged on the phone last night. There's 4 of them, too." "We better get busy then," said Harvey. We started in by reinforcing the entire fort with more snow. Dink went back to making more snowballs. Carlisle looked at us and shifted about impatiently at the end of his rope. "I better feed my goat," I said. "What are you going to feed him?" said Amos. "He smells like he ate a couple of skunks already," said Harvey. "I don't know," I said. "Hey, look what happened to my gloves. I left them frozen to the floor last night, and now that's all that's left is fingers and thumbs." "That ought to answer your question," said Dink. "Go find him a bushel of gloves somewhere." I went back home and swiped half a head of lettuce, some heels of bread, a bunch of orange peels, a few Christmas cookies, and some bird seed that Callie had for her parrot. Carlisle sniffed everything carefully and then ate it all except the orange peels. We were all pretty excited when we met in the fort after lunch. "Now, I'll cover the center section because I'm the best shot," said Dink, who wasn't lying. That's why we let him be leader. "Amos, you cover anything on the left since you're left-handed. Bud, you take the right side. Harvey, you stay down behind the fort and make sure to keep us all supplied with snowballs." "Baloney," said Harvey, but we all knew that he would. It was a bright afternoon, with the sun reflecting off the snow so hard it made you squint your eyes to see. I had tied Carlisle down inside our fort and stationed myself over on the right side as Dink had ordered. "Here they come!" yelled Harvey. "Get down there and take care of those snowballs," Dink commanded. "And don't fire till I tell you to. We'll use yesterday's old hard snowballs for long-range shooting. Today's when they're closer, and hard ones again when they charge." I didn't know how Dink knew they would charge, but he acted like he knew what he was doing. Over on my side, I didn't see anything to throw at. Coming down the street off to the left were 2 kids. One was Myron Webster, and I didn't remember the name of the other one. "There's 2 more of them someplace," Dink cautioned. Myron and his pal stopped just out of range. They knew how far Dink could throw. They whispered together for a few minutes, pointing in different directions now and then. Then the one whose name I didn't know went back up the street out of sight. In a few minutes, he came back with a push cart loaded with snowballs. "Oh, my goodness," moaned Amos. Just after he said it, something whistled by my ear like an angry hummingbird. It plopped into the snow about 25 feet behind me. While I'd watched the 2 decoys, those other 2 South Harleyville apes had creeped up from our right side. They were behind some trees right on the corner of our vacant lot. "I see them," said Dink calmly. "Don't throw yet. They'll come closer." And that's just what they did. From then on, it was war in its bloodiest form as both parties of our enemy charged. "Let 'em have it!" screamed Dink. As he said it, he let fly with one of his specialties that caught one of those kids in the neck and knocked his hat off. That's how hard it hit. I began to throw like crazy. Sometimes I'd hit, but mostly I'd miss. The ones I did land, however, seemed to really jolt them guys. I was mighty glad we had Dink on our side to make those perfect snowballs. Harvey was scurrying back and forth, bringing us new supplies from the 3 great heaps of snowballs we had made. Amos seemed to be holding his own on our left flank, while Dink and I peppered away at our 2 opponents on the right. They would jump out from behind a tree and throw, and then jump back. We weren't hitting them, and they weren't hitting us. "This ain't getting us nowhere," commented Dink. "We've got to run them out from those trees." "Let's go, bud. Amos, you and Harvey stay and guard the fort." Together, we charged out of there like a couple of lunatics, carrying as much ammunition as we could. I caught a snowball in the shoulder, but it didn't slow me down. That Dink could run at top speed and throw a snowball sidearm at the same time with such accuracy that nobody would dare to stand in his way. Our enemy began to retreat, ducking from tree to tree until they reached the street and had to make a break for it. "That ought to learn 'em," said Dink, letting fly with his last snowball. But when we turned to go back to the fort, we realized we'd been faked out. While we had chased the 2 kids from the tree, Myron and his pal had advanced on the fort, using the pushcart as both protection and supply dump. Amos and Harvey were no match for the blistering attack and were being forced from the fort. "Good gosh, Bud, quick, we got to get back there and help or we'll lose the fort," cried Dink. But we both knew it was too late. As we ran, I noticed Amos was doing something inside the fort, while Harvey tried to fight off the 2 attackers alone. Then I saw what he was doing. Amos had untied Carlyle the last minute before he and Harvey ducked out of the fort. Carlyle must have been in a bad mood from being tied up for so long. Or maybe he didn't like the diet I had fed him. Also, I think that somebody must have tried to teach Carlyle to pull a cart once, and he was against the idea. Because when he came stalking out of our snow fort, he took one look at that advancing pushcart and he knew just what to do. Myron and his friend were crouched down behind it, so they didn't see Carlyle sniff the air and then paw at the ground for a second before he put his head down and charged. When he hit that pushcart, it sounded like an automobile accident and looked like an explosion. Myron, his friend, Carlyle, and 100 different snowballs all shot out in different directions. The concussion separated the pushcart body from its wheels, the wheels rolling off sickly in 2 different directions while the body just collapsed into so much kindling. And that's how we destroyed the pushcart and won the battle. By the time Dink and I arrived, our opponents had retreated out of range. They were all out of ammunition and in a state of shock from Carlyle's efforts. Just before they left for good, Myron Webster waved a fist at us in final warning. But we had won! There was no doubt about it. "We really took 'em!" shouted Dink, jumping around and slapping us all on the back. "There's only one thing." He looked right at me. "I know they'll be back. And Bud, that goat of yours did a fine job. But he takes up so much room and smells so bad. It's a wonder we didn't have to surrender before they even got here." I looked to Amos and Harvey for support, but they just nodded in agreement with Dink and held their noses. "Okay," I said, "just let me tie him out in the lot until tomorrow night. Give me until then to find a new place for him. And remember not to tell Caleb about him." "We don't have to tell him about that goat. Everybody in the county can smell him," said Dink. The next day was the day before Christmas Eve, and everything around our house was busy. Dink and Amos and Harvey held the fort, so to speak, while I tried to find a new place to hide Carlyle. Every so often, I'd run down to the corner to make sure we weren't being attacked. I couldn't find anywhere to put that old goat. There was absolutely no place to hide him in the garage. That left the house. I wandered through rooms from top to bottom, trying to find a spot to place a goat. After lunch, Mama noticed me looking around. Now you get out of here, bud. You've been snooping around all day. You keep it up and there won't be anything for you on Christmas. I'm not looking for any presents, I said, kind of mad at being falsely accused. Heck, I knew where every present I was going to get was, and what it was. Well, go outside anyway, make a snowman or something, Mama said. Callie and I are going downtown to do some last-minute shopping. That's all I needed to know. Caleb was upstairs reading a book, and Papa had gone down to the office. With nobody around, I could investigate a lot more carefully. After they'd gone, I went through the house again, and that's when I decided on the hall closet. Our hall closet is built kind of underneath the stairs, and it's a big one. In the far end, away from the door, where the closet tapers down to nothing, Mama used to store luggage. But she'd gotten Papa to haul it all the way up to the attic one Saturday afternoon. In that little end, there was room for Carlisle, even if I did have to stuff him in. And I hid him by piling up the remaining boxes into a wall across the closet. Carlisle offered no resistance as I let him into his new home. Just as I closed the door, Petunia wandered in from a nap in the living room. She took about 2 steps down the hall and then froze, sniffing at the air. And then she began to growl and stiffen her legs. The hair along her spine stood straight up. "Hey, cut it out," I whispered, afraid that she would give the whole thing away. Paying no attention to me, she continued to point toward the closet. Just then, the back door slammed closed, and I heard Papa's footsteps in the kitchen. I threw myself on all fours, growling, advancing toward Petunia. "Ruff! Rrr!" I said as Papa walked by me. Petunia continued to ignore me and to growl and look at the closet. "What are you doing, bud?" Papa inquired. "Oh, we're just playing, Papa. Ruff! 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 Petunia and I dogfight all the time." "You do?" asked Papa. "Oh, sure. Ruff! We like it. See how Petunia likes to play dogfight, Papa?" "Yes, I noticed that. Really looks like she's upset, doesn't she?" "Yes, sir," I answered, and Papa went on upstairs. That settled it. I had to get Petunia out of there. "Here, girl," I whispered. She wouldn't even look at me. Her nose told her there was an intruder inside that closet, and she had made up her mind to wait for him to come out. It took a short length of clothesline rope from the kitchen and a great deal of determination to pull Petunia out of the house. 15 minutes later, I was back on the corner with Dink and the gang. We still hadn't been attacked. "I don't know what's the matter with them guys," complained Amos. "They're not beaten yet," said Dink. "They just want to catch us when we're not ready." This must have been true because they still hadn't come after us by supper time, so we all went home, uneasy and disappointed. Callie met me at the door. "You'll be on your best behavior tonight, won't you, bud?" "Huh?" I said. Callie frisked me and made me show her everything in my pockets. "You promised you'd be good. Remember now?" "Oh, yeah," I said. "Don't worry so much." She followed me down the hall. "Bud?" she asked. "What?" "Bud, are you making that smell?" "Huh?" I said. "I asked you if you were making that terrible odor. Can't you smell it?" I sniffed. The whole hallway was full of something that hung in the air. I recognized it. It was Carlisle. I hadn't noticed it when he was outside in the fresh air, or at least I tried not to. But inside, I could notice the smell just fine. Nah, I don't smell anything," I lied. My nose is kind of stuffed up." "Well, I smell it, and it's awful," said Callie. She went back upstairs to put some more gunk on her face. Papa came in and hung his coat in the hall closet. He put the big box with his new suit in it on the floor and turned around and looked at me for a minute. "Go take a bath, bud," he said, and walked by me into the living room. Caleb came downstairs yawning. He stopped on the last step and sniffed. "Good grief, Bud," he said. Just then, Mama came in from the kitchen to tell us supper was ready. "Supper's ready," said Mama. She looked at me, then she looked at Caleb, and then she looked back at me. "Go wash your hands, boys," she said. The main subject at dinner, of course, was that smell. "A rat must have crawled into the wall and died," said Papa. "Oh, maybe it's a whole herd of rats," said Caleb. Callie was already dressed up, so she wouldn't have to keep good old Herbie Coggins waiting in case he arrived early. Just before dessert, I thought I heard a noise from the hall closet. "What was that?" asked Papa. "What was what?" I said. "That noise out in the hall." "Maybe it was snow falling off the house," I offered. "No, it was kind of a sound," said Papa. "Oh, you didn't put on your new suit," Callie noticed suddenly. "I'll have time after supper," said Papa. "No, you won't. It's almost 7:30 now. Won't you go put it on now, Papa, please?" "Oh, all right," Papa answered, looking sadly at the custard Mama was just bringing in. I heard his footsteps go across the hall. I heard the closet door open. Then I heard the light in the closet click on. Then I didn't hear anything except Caleb eating his custard. Papa came back to the supper table. He looked sort of dazed. Under his arm was the box with his new suit inside it. "Orville," said Mama, "what's wrong?" Papa looked from Caleb to me and back again. He had a funny look on his face. Then he put his hand up to his head and sort of groaned. I breathed easier. I knew how he was going to take Carlisle now. "Did you ever see a cow with a beard?" asked Mama, putting on his simple-minded look. "Even in this home?" "It's finally happened," Mama said quietly, kind of to herself. "He's lost his mind. Quick, children, up to your rooms. I don't want you to see him like this." Callie held her forehead. Mama and Papa can carry on this act a long time when they want to rub it in that we're driving them to the booby hatch. And suppose Herbie caught some of it. "I saw one in the hall closet," said Papa proudly. "It wanted to eat my new suit, but I wouldn't let it. I told it to go away." "Go, children, go quickly," begged Mama. Somebody began to pound on our front door. "Oh, that's Herbie," moaned Callie, rushing to let him in. "Why did that bearded cow want to eat my new suit?" Papa asked Mama. It's all right, dear," said Mama. "I'll see you through this thing, if it means nursing you for the rest of my life." "We haven't always had that bearded cow in the hall closet, have we?" asked Papa. Callie came in dragging somebody who looked like he was in a clown suit. There were so many snowball marks on him. "Some of those nasty boys from South Harleyville tried to kill Herbie when he got out of his car," wailed Callie, all excited. "Why, they almost snowballed him to death, and Herbie didn't do a thing to them." "Goodness gracious," muttered Caleb. I could tell he didn't think much of this Herbie. "And there was this huge dog dragging a doghouse all over the place," Herbie added. Just then, Carlisle wandered in from the hall and came over to me. Herbie Coggins jumped up on the table. "Look at the elk!" he shouted. "That's the one," said Papa, smiling. "Merry Christmas, Caleb," I said weakly, keeping my eyes on my custard. "Make him promise he won't try to eat my suit again," Papa asked Mama. said Carlisle. Mama just stared at all of us like she couldn't believe it. And that's the end of me and Caleb. Hope you enjoyed.